Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're talking to Rabbi Gurfein once again, and it's actually the first time since the war started. And ironically, it's happening on the 7th, which on the Gregorian calendar, it's been exactly 1 month since this started. And it's really weird because it's hard to believe that it's only been a month. So much is happening. As you guys have been watching my videos, we've been covering just all these different updates and things progressing in the war. And it feels like it's been more than a month, but it's only been a month. And Rabbi Gurfein's been busy attending to other things, which we'll talk about today. And we're just thankful that he's safe. I had called on prayers for him, for Samantha Siegel, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, Ellie Michelle, and others in Israel that we've talked to on the channel. So they all seem to be okay for the moment, and I'm hoping that everything's okay. You didn't say anything in the emails, but I'm assuming that everything's okay with your friends and family. You didn't have anybody that was caught up in what happened on October 7th.
No. I mean, I have two grandsons that are in the army that are right now active in Gaza, but
Wow.
Everybody has somebody in right now.
Yeah. What are their jobs in the military?
Kill the bad guys.
In what way? With artillery or guns or?
I'm not allowed to reveal that. I'm sorry. No, I actually, look, I'm a grandfather. What do I know? You think you even know your kids? Wait till you get to grandchildren. You won't even have a clue of a clue.
Well, we pray for their safety. I hope that everything will be okay. They'll come home safe.
Amen.
So what can you tell us, like, how this is played out from your point of view? Like, you know, how this like started, like when it like really started to dawn on you that this was a big thing, and what's been happening since that time.
Right, in 25 words or less.
Yes.
Okay. I think that I'll jump to the end and work, then go back to the start. The end game is that, from my not at all humble opinion, we are dealing in parallel universes at unbelievable speeds. And those parallel universes is the world of this kingdom and the world of the kingdom above. And each one, in a sense, on a superficial level, seems to have its own agenda. But when the game plays out, it'll be clear that it was only one agenda. And therefore, there's going to be more and more like a seesaw, like if one kid's down, the other one's up, and there's the variations. There's going to be kind of fluctuations between things which can be really to the nth degree evil, and that will be counterbalanced at a point in time with things that will defy what we understand the laws of nature to be. So, and then the people who are tuned into one are not always tuned into the other. And so you have to develop like bifocal or split screen vision, so you can be aware and a participant at the same time. So I find, as an example, the day the war began. So everyone refers to it as October 7th, which over here really means nothing except that Halloween is coming up. So October 7th, this particular year, was a tremendous Jewish holiday. Just like the war, they attacked us on Yom Kippur. This is Simchat. In Israel, we call it Simchat Torah. There are many names for it, right? I don't remember how to say these things in English anymore. Yeah, except for you, I haven't spoken English for a while, so it's kind of rushing back in. Forgive me. Anyhow, but the point is, it's a great Jewish holiday. And we have a service outdoors because it all began during Corona, and everybody liked everybody so much. We're now there 3 years later, and it's just a regular thing that we do outdoors. It's great. We pray, the birds join in. It's really wonderful. And all of a sudden, we were going to have some sort of a little toast after the end of the services, and the sirens go off. And everybody's looking at everybody thinking, like, what is this? What, sirens? Nobody expected any kind of sirens. And sure enough, and then not only that, nobody remembered which siren meant what. It was, if it's a straight sound or if it's a wavy. Yeah, please.
A couple quick things. First, with Simchat Torah, we've talked about that on the channel in other videos, but I wanted to clarify. If the 9th of Av is the saddest day on the Hebrew calendar, is Simchat Torah, is that the happiest day? I know it's a day of celebration at the end of the Feast of
It is a day
Tabernacles.
of celebration. Hanukkah is also a happy day and a celebration, and so is Purim and so on. But they all are, for that matter. But the one that's associated, at least in the Talmudic term, as the other day, which is of great joy, is Yom Kippur, and an obscure day that nobody's ever heard of, which is the 15th of the month of Av, right? Tisha B'Av means the 9th of Av. Tisha is 9. It's the 9th of Av. So the 15th of Av is also a phenomenal holiday that nobody really knows about. That day plus Yom Kippur, those are the two happiest days.
Okay. And then secondly, how often is it that you have sirens going off in Jerusalem before the war? I've noticed that during the war, because I've been like watching the, what's it called, Seva Adom alert system, and I've seen like relatively few going toward Jerusalem. But before the war, how, with other flare-ups, how often?
Following. Maybe I'm sorry. You have to tell me here. What is the war? What is the beginning date of the war that you're referring to?
Well, with this most recent, the Israeli-Hamas war that's going on right now.
Yeah, but I mean, give me there are a bunch of events. Which event specifically are you referring to as the kickoff of the war?
Well, I guess when Hamas came in and they went after all those different communities around the Gaza Strip.
Right, that was October 7th.
Yeah.
Okay, on October 7th, when Israel was invaded and its citizens and civilians, right? Remember how everyone's yelling, "Ooh, watch out for civilian life"? Didn't hear any of that when it was the other side of the ping pong table. But when that was happening, that's when the rockets began to come out. In fact, the rockets were part of a distraction so that people wouldn't think there was going to be a land invasion. The activity the week prior to that in Jenin was a distraction in order to try to draw a lot of troops to the West Bank, far from where the attack was going to be. The comment by Nasrallah and other leaders when they said, "Ooh, maybe we shouldn't attack Israel because we're going to rip themselves apart with the civil war that everyone thought was coming," was also a distraction from the preparation of the war. So there were no rockets coming in except for the day the war, October 7th, began. Now, thank God, since we've been able to move the ball to the other side of the field, so now we're seeing really rarely sirens going off in the area here, at least. Now, the other question is, will there be sirens going off now from the north, from Lebanon? That's the big issue now, and that's why your Secretary of State was just in Lebanon. And that's why the United States has brought over an Ohio submarine, because there's all kinds of things that have a potential here. This is not going to be a Israel-Hamas war. That is a distraction itself. And Hamas has made it loud and clear. Next stop is the United States. And you've even had senators who talk about cells that are already there of Hezbollah and Hamas in the United States. So, this, for anybody to be that parochial is dangerous for all of us. It's important to realize this may be where the beginning begins, but this is not where the fight ends. So that's something we're all aware of over here also.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all watching that very closely to see where this is going to go. And
did you hear about the Cowboys who just came here?
Yeah, you sent me that email.
Oh, I did. Right, good.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's pretty cool. Real Nebraska, with their hats walking around in the airport in Tel Aviv.
So, but like generally speaking, so in the period before the war, so like going back 10, 20 years, is it very often that rockets ever come toward Jerusalem?
Well, okay. Forget the word Jerusalem for a minute. Is it common that rockets are fired over a internationally recognized border at civilian locations? Right? Imagine all of a sudden you get some cross, you guys are all talking about the Mexican border. Well, what if Hezbollah moved up some units about 2 miles shy of there and started lobbying over rockets into downtown Houston, not into, military locations.
Right.
So I'm sure that when the Americans went in there, the United Nations wouldn't say, well, no, we need a ceasefire. That wouldn't happen. Okay, it's a power game. So from our perspective, it doesn't matter where the rocket comes to. In fact, is where the rocket's fired from. So any rocket fired out of Gaza technically is an act of war. Israel chose not to go to war. So,
I'm just asking because like I'm just wondering your personal experience. Like, are you like very used to it where you are? Because
oh, I've been in the Army, I've lived, I not only, but I was in the Army during the Gulf War here, with my pea shooter. And I was lived through the Intifada, as they called it. I've seen buses blow up. I've seen restaurants blow up. I've lived here. I've had friends who've lost friends. I've been here through thick and thin because this is God's holy land. This is where payback is going to come from, either for good or bad. And our God, because there's only one God, is right now sort of like, spinning the basketball, but spinning the planet a little bit. It's having effects on our sun. It's having effects on our brains. And you now have people on this planet that are infected with a horrible cancerous disease. They're obsessed with murder. And it just seems like the Jew, because that's the one that we're getting hit right now, but that's not their history. And that's not what this will lead to either. So, I mean, can you get used to it? I don't know. I don't know about getting used to it. All I know is like this. Here's the game plan. I see it. Every human being dies. Everybody's been sentenced to life here on planet Earth. Nobody, okay, let's say a few people got out of here alive. It's not going to be you or me. So another question is, why are we living? The answer is because God has given us an unbelievable opportunity to serve him in darkness, in a planet of in a planet of lies, of darkness, of all kinds of sources for evil that can succeed, where good people can be experiencing bad things and vice versa. And yet, if we stick in our darkness to our faith in God, we will definitely see something phenomenal in this world or the next. And at least from our perspective, since one of our 13 principal beliefs is in the resurrection of the dead, so then, okay, so I get bumped off. I mean, it's horrible. Of course it's horrible, but I'll be back. Because God will bring all the dead back. Yeah. And so as long as I'm holding that keel, then I have nothing to worry about. What happens to me, God plans and God does. But how I navigate, that's where my free will kicks in. So to have the opportunity to be over here and go through the horrible thick and thin, rather than being a multimillionaire on Wall Street, money comes and goes, fads come and go, things come and go. But this is like, this is the future, the past, and the present all wrapped up in one city.
For real. Okay, so Simchat Torah, you're outside celebrating the holiday. The sirens go off. People aren't quite sure. Okay, is it this siren? Is it that siren? What happened in your experience after that?
It gets very Mel Brooks-esque. Okay. All of a sudden, the community splits into, well, not half, but two parts. One of the native Israelis and one of the expats from anywhere else in the world, and they're all over the world. We have Americans, Canadians, Russians, all over the world, right here in our, Paris, so on. And so the Israelis, right away, if you remember, like Marvel comic, the Hulk, suddenly they go from these nice little, the shirts rip off, and they're like these war machines that know exactly what to do and who to call them, and the rest of us are like dependent. Now the second group also breaks in half or in parts, and that's those of us who've been here through wars, did that, and those are the new boys who haven't been through a war yet. In fact, I went over to one guy who was like freaking. I said, "It's all right, it's just your first war. You'll get through it." Anyhow. So that was very funny to see. But for myself, who's been here next year, God willing, 50 years. So that's what it is. It's what it is. King Solomon says there's a time for peace, there's a time for war. You can't have peace at a time of war. Just like it's wrong to have war at a time of peace, it's equally wrong to have peace at a time of war. Time of war is war, and it has to be fought like a war, just like it says in the Bible. And so we live like that, and that's how we are. I'd rather, God forbid, go down here as part of history, kidding? Being part of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and 3,000 some hundred years later, here I am back in Jerusalem on a kippah talking to my buddy in Kansas about God's word. That's huge. So it's worth more than anything. I don't need a Cadillac or whatever. So, and then the newbies, they got used to it quick. But here's the funny part I want to tell you about the story. It had just ended the prayers, and we were supposed to have this big, we call it in Hebrew, a kiddush, a big, like, everyone raises a cup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the organizers yells, well, wait a minute. because we had in our, even though we're outdoors, we have these parking, indoor parking, but they leave the door open, and in there was all the tables with the foods and stuff. The guy said, well, what are we gonna do for the food? Why doesn't everybody just grab something on your way home? Figuring, like, the sirens are going off, everyone's gonna run, maybe just grab something and then run, because otherwise all this food's gonna go to waste. So everybody runs over to the food area, but now all of a sudden, they're talking, hey, hey, I wasn't sure that was you. Hey, hello, how you doing? And then you can have a little bit more meat on that plate with it. It's like in the face of the food, everybody forgot there was a war going on. That's what I meant. It was very Mel Brooks-like. Did you pass the regular Coke?
So, well, that's the thing. So, like at that time, as that was going on, like in your mind, did you think, because there's no way that you could have known that this was gonna be what it is right now, this big war that's going on? Did you think that maybe this was just kind of, just another flare up, nothing as serious as what it turned out to be? Like, was there?
Well, okay, don't forget it's a holiday, so we can't turn on our phones, so we were very limited in information. There was only one of the guys was an officer, so he ran and he had to come back, and then he updated us on what was going on. But there was nothing like, it wasn't like the prime minister was calling me. Just had to be aware of where our bomb shelters were, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you're kind of like in the dark, yes, for sure. And in the dark, you play the what if game. And I think most people, like you said, thought it was, well, America is going to have Saudi Arabia and Israel tie a new knot together, and this is Hamas's way of trying to stop it. So they're firing some rockets.
Yeah. And then it probably wasn't until like the next day when you really started to get all the information and like see the horrors that happened the day before.
Right.
Because it was really confusing for me, because when I was watching, at the very beginning, and I was watching an interview of a lady that was I don't know if she was in Sderot, but she was somewhere down there. And she was just talking about like, this is like worse than normal, because like, it's not just rockets, like there's people coming. And at that time, I didn't know like how often there was ever any ground attack from Hamas. And she didn't seem like very, like, I don't know. It was kind of weird at the beginning. There was like that fog of war. And then for me, it wasn't until, much later where like you saw the full scale of everything that was going on. All the videos started coming out, and it was just like, whoa.
When you were in the military, did you see action?
Not very much. I was in Bagram in Afghanistan, but it was a relatively safe place in the country. But there were like rocket attacks and stuff on the base.
Right. Did you like finish your cigarette before you ran for cover?
Well, I don't smoke, but I was one time, I was in the dining facility, and I was eating and stuff, and it was like, this was like when I had first gotten there, and there was the siren that was going off for our sector, and that's the first time that I had experienced that, and I was like, serious? And so like I did take a minute to put my tray so I didn't just like drop to the ground, but but then after that, like whenever there were rocket attacks and the sirens went off, I was kind of more desensitized over time, because it was like done a few times a week. So yeah.
What kind of time did you have between siren and impact?
Oh, I don't know. Like you were just supposed to basically take cover immediately. It depended on the type of siren, but if it was in your sector, like take cover immediately.
Just hit the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
And then with other ones, you're supposed to go to like designated, like shelters and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same here. I mean, here most people know where they live, how much time they have from siren to impact. And then the other thing is when the Iron Dome knocks them down, you hear, the way you know that's the Iron Dome and not a rocket landing is because there's a double explosion, because the Iron Dome shoots 2 rockets at the incoming item. Yeah. So, by the way, it's, in America, as kids, we used to have, I'm sure you had this, the knock knock, who's there jokes.
Yeah.
So this is the new knock knock, who's there at Iron Dome.
So I know that you were busy after it all started. That's why we haven't been able to talk. Like, what have you been engaged in during this time?
Bringing in equipment to the country through countries that normally wouldn't sell directly to Israel.
Oh, good. And you've had success with that?
Yeah, amazing, because there are a lot of good people on our planet.
That's really good.
Yeah. There's also a lot of pretty rotten people on the planet. we sit here and listen to the Russian Prime Minister Putin demand that we should be doing a full ceasefire, and then the next article in the newspaper is how many people they just bombed in the Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hypocrisy is phenomenal for anyone who wishes to see it.
I saw a really scary thing happen in Russia where there were some Israelis that were going there. Huh?
The airport invasion?
Yeah, at the airport. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the inside story of that, which will blow your mind, which makes it worse. There is no direct flight from Israel to that city. This was a special chartered flight. It's true, there were people who then took advantage of the charter and they were going to transfer from there to go to Moscow. But it was a charter flight. And the main reason the flight was being chartered is because there were 8 Muslim children with cancer that were returning from a year therapy in Tel Aviv hospitals.
Oh, so that's why they...
No. The people who stormed the plane didn't know that. But that's why the plane was there.
Yeah.
These 8 boys, or children rather, were all being returned home.
Oh, wow. You guys, in case you don't know what we're referring to, there was this flight. It landed in Russia. And I guess like the Muslims in the area got wind of that it was coming. And, they basically stormed the airport and got on the tarmac, and they were demanding like seeing the passports of the passengers.
And all over the whole building, not just the tarmac, everywhere in the building.
Yeah, everywhere. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I was thinking about doing a video about it, but I didn't end up doing it. But it was a really crazy incident. Another thing that I recently heard, this was actually from today. Gosh, I can't remember where I saw it, but this article was talking about the fact that because of this like just intense rise of anti-Semitism throughout the world, that there's probably going to be a lot of Jews that end up coming to Israel, even though Israel is at war, coming to Israel from safety from what they're experiencing throughout the world.
I think the interesting thing, I'm a little bit older than you. When I grew up, a lot of my friends were in Vietnam in the war. And a lot of them were there as well towards the end. Not the very end, but towards the end. And one of the things I always remember them saying, which was so strange, they described Saigon, which no longer exists, but they described Saigon as the most beautiful, calm, peaceful jazz concerts, in anywhere they've ever been. And yet Saigon, in the end, of course, it wasn't, the famous footage of going up on the roof of the embassy with the helicopters. But the point of it is that they said the only way they could understand was the eye of a hurricane. That everything around is getting ripped and ripped and ripped, but in the center, it's peaceful and quiet. So I think that people are starting to feel, I would say it's people with a sense of religious identity. I don't know how many secular Jews are coming, but it's people with a little identity and realizing, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's all go together. Let's go to Israel. God is phenomenal. God told us in the prophets that the miracles that we will see in the upcoming war of God will be so stupendous, they will dwarf the 10 plagues of Egypt. In fact, our sages teach us that at this upcoming period of time and the miracles that will happen against the enemies of God and Israel are going to be where in our prayers, we always use the following verse quite often called Zecher liatziat Mitzrayim, which means as a remembrance to our coming out of Egypt. And the sages say, that's gone. We'll never use that term again. It will be replaced with Zecher liatziat Olam, a remembrance to the coming out of the 4 corners of the world. And so that's, I feel a lot of people are feeling, you know what, let's go put my money on God's number. So that it sounds funny coming here, but at least here you have an army. And at least here, everybody around you is carrying a gun. I mean, in America, it's probably the same like that as well. The bad guys and the good guys in America intermingle too freely. That's the problem.
So I wonder if that's maybe one of the silver linings of this whole thing is bringing more people back to Israel, whereas maybe otherwise they wouldn't have.
May I share a joke about that we have?
Yeah.
There's a joke of he's like a little religious Jewish guy in Brooklyn. He's got a gift shop for the last 60 years. Moshe. And all of a sudden, his buddy Shlomi runs in, and Shlomi says, like, freaked out. And Moshe says, Shlomi, what are you all freaked out? I says, what am I freaked out about? Haven't you heard the news? And Moshe said, what's the news? He said, the Messiah has come. We got to leave Brooklyn. We have to go back to Israel. And Moshe says, calm down. We got through the Depression. We got through the war. But the point is that, that's what I said by the parallel worlds. Parallel world is that the higher world has its agenda. Its agenda is there has to be what's called kibbutz galiyut. There has to be the ingathering of the exiles. It's explicit in Zechariah and other sources in the prophets. Zechariah and other sources in the prophets. It's there in Bible and white, So God says, okay, you guys are really deeply entrenched in your financial whatever. Here, let me shake up your community a little bit. And that's what's happening, shaking, and people are coming. It's great.
Oh man, it sure has been shaking. I've been seeing all the things happening across Europe and here in the United States. There was a Jewish man
just killed today.
Yeah. Do you know where that was at?
No, I was going to ask you.
Dang it. No, I don't know. But
yeah. And 69 years old, hit in the head with a microphone or whatever it's called, megaphone.
Yeah, megaphone by a pro-Gaza Hamas person. Yeah.
Who has a valid passport.
Yeah. So sure. Are you thinking, so are you having that feeling that this is the start of that war, or like that this is like Gog and Magog that's starting to play out?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I prepared, in fact, a 25-page because I actually wanted to share with you that there are a lot of, in the olden days, we used to call it snake oil. Remember snake oil?
Yeah, I know what snake oil is.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So there are people going around trying to interpret the writings of the prophets and pinpointing it like as if they're sewing it together with today's newspaper. And some of them are absolutely brilliant beyond makes the hair you don't have stand up. And then there are others which are like complete, out to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and clearly don't understand like how to learn scripture. So people have to realize the same way you wouldn't take a medicine unless it came from a reliable source and the doctor you trust, right? Mm-hmm. So eating soul food also has to have a certain awareness of who's feeding that to us. It's very important. However, because I said that, then what my teachers have taught me is that all futuristic prophetic writings they're not tangible. It's like a dream. In other words, in reality, you interpret reality, but in a dream, by interpreting the dream, then the dream becomes the interpretation. In reality, the reality doesn't change according to the interpretation. So if you made a bad interpretation, it's just you're wrong. That's not what happened. But in a dream, the interpretation actually impacts the dream, and it becomes whatever person has interpreted. This is the whole Joseph and Pharaoh dream interpretation ideas and so on. So so the same way, parallel to that is prophecies. They're in the same school, obviously much different level, but same school as dreams, only in the metaphoric sense. So they are real, but you know what? By the time you get there, it might not be the same as when he was looking at it. And so therefore, you have to be very careful, because a person can really put their last dollar on something, like, God forbid, Jonestown in South America. And guess what? No spaceship went by. And now these people are dead. So that's why I always I don't try to do it. What I do is when I go over these writings, I teach this stuff right now. A lot of people are asking me about this. I have a whole class called End of Days. But I always preface it by saying that these are just kind of giving us directions and parameters and signs to look forward. Now, having said that, there's another element. Jews, we only think in algorithms. So there are a lot of components here. So another part of this algorithm is a different factor. And that's the factor of that there is a divine will that will happen. And so therefore, the question is, how will it unfold is part of where we partner with creation and we make decisions. But where it will unfold to is the exclusive property of God. There will be a third temple in Jerusalem. that's the end of the game. There will be. How that will happen, we don't know that. And so therefore, many of these prophecies show us, well, if you go down this way and make a left, it's almost the same if you come through that gate, right? But it's all talking about the same thing with variables. That's why we have to be careful in trying to apply the prophecies, but at the same time, we have to know that there are concrete events which will be unfolding, and therefore, point I want to make is the potential for those points to unfold will always be given to each generation. So this could be the benchmark of what could begin the word Gog Magog. It doesn't mean that it is, and it doesn't mean that it will be. It simply means it could be. And that's a different way of looking at it. That way, you're assessing it, you're aware of where it could go, and rapidly. I mean, hey, when you were, I'm sorry, just because our age difference. When you were a kid, did you have Super 8 movie players in the house?
No. No.
You're already older than that? I mean, younger than that?
I guess so. Just VCRs and laser discs.
Oh, that was like cutting edge technology. So we used to have these little like wheel at the top, a wheel at the bottom, a little machine. And then you put up the screen and all the family came over and you watch everyone surfing in black and white in Hawaii. And what happens is sometimes at the very, very end, though, it gets stuck. And because it gets stuck in the heat of the lamp, what you're seeing on the screen is what you're just seeing a minute ago, everybody laughing, ha ha ha. Suddenly you see this like bubble in the film, and then it goes pop, and it goes black, right? So that's sort of how sometimes when we're looking at these prophecies and seeing where they're unfolding, we have to know that we're not looking at something which isn't really the film. It's something that's, akin to that. I hope that was not a too long-winded answer to your question.
No, that was fine. What's the general sense of the people that you talk to, like your friends and family and all that? Like, is there like more, messianic talk, more, or like people speculating? Is there a lot of speculation that this is potentially that war?
People love to do that. I can't remember, unfortunately, the name of the philosopher who said that we have only two eyes that look in front of us, and the only thing we see is what's behind us. In other words, what happened in history. Nobody knows what's going to happen 5 seconds from now. But we live with this like a complete illusion of, well, not only 5 seconds, next year I'm going to do this, and then I'm hoping to be in the Caribbean, and by then really? John Lennon of the Beatles once said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. So one of the ways the mind tries to cope with the unknown, because we all like to feel like we're in control, that's why we need to have a sense of what's going to happen, because I'm in control. I know what's going to happen. I can plan for it. I have no idea what's going to happen. What do I do? So that's where the mind races into speculations and things. It's a dangerous place to go. It's like a drug almost, it's like getting really drunk or something, like losing your sense of consciousness. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. In fact, that's what we're always taught. We're taught in yeshiva that the highest level of wisdom is that you don't know. Ad shelo yada, until you do not know. And that's once you realize that you do not know, then you open up the faith in God valves, which is the whole reason we're here. Mm-hmm. So we have to do what we have to do. We have to plan, work, do our best, use our creativity, think out of the box. And all I can say is, if I was a betting guy, I don't know, Jews been around for 3,000 plus years. We've been through Holocaust, we've seen Crusaders, we've seen Inquisitions, we've seen pogroms, we've seen Romans, we've seen everybody. And hello, still here. So I don't know how God's going to make it happen, but that's because I'm not God. But I know that God will make it happen. And so that's like what God, I think what God's doing right now is he's setting the field. Who's with me and who's against me. I think that's what's really coming down to. And the ones in the middle are going to be shaken out because it's push come to shove. And so it's not really going to be a verbal I'm in or out. It's going to be maybe there's action that has to be taken, which God will see as you're in. I mean, that's just how I kind of see it.
That makes sense. I talk about that a lot on my channel, that there's a lot more value in just like waiting and seeing what actually happens, like to be aware of prophecy. And
yes,
and I think it's okay to think about things, but it's much more valuable just to wait and see.
Yeah, you want to go over one together?
Yeah.
You have time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see. How would I do this real fast? Okay. Oh, look, there's a hang time in the movement and the. Are you getting that also?
Mm-mm. No.
You don't see a time warp in the movement and the sound?
Nope.
All right, never mind. I must have fallen into a different dimension. So here, let me do. screen share. Okay. You know what? Whoops. How'd that happen? Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. So this text is from the book called the Zohar, which I know you're familiar with, on the book of names, or I'm not sure, Exodus. Oh, there, Exodus, we call it Shemot. And it's on the chapter called Vayera, which is what we just read this last Shabbat. This last weekend was this Parsha in the Zohar.
Just really quick, just for everyone else, because I'm always like, not everybody watches all my videos. Can you just briefly explain the Zohar?
The Zohar is the core text of Jewish mystical literature.
Kabbalah.
Yeah, right. Kabbalah, right.
Okay.
I think that was a known word.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the future, the children of Ishmael, right? This was Abraham's son from the Egyptian handmaid Hagar, will rule the Holy Land for a long period of time, during which the land is empty. They shall prevent the children of Israel from returning to their place until the right to their land is expired. The children of Ishmael will wage powerful battles in the world and will join the children of Edom in order to fight the children of Israel, which is why I found this is a very interesting picture of Adolf Hitler, Imad Shemo, and the Mufti of the Dome of the Rock of Al-Aqsa Mosque here in Jerusalem. This was, in fact, most people know the horrible expression called the final solution, but they don't know is it was not Hitler's idea, nor was it one of his officers, as they suggest. It was actually the Mufti who came up with the idea.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yep. It's all out there in Wiki. Okay. Here, Zohar. Now we're in the same book, but now we're in a earlier. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. This is. Yeah. Excuse me. My mistake. This is also now the first book of the Bible. Oh, here it's in English. Genesis, and chapter of Vayera, and this is the chapter. My mistake. This is the chapter that we just finished reading. The other one was we haven't gotten to. All the nations shall unite together against the daughter, which in Hebrew really means capital, of Jacob, in order to annihilate her from the world. Right? United Nations, the ICC, Russia, China, who knows what, all get together to annihilate Israel. Concerning that time, it is written, it will be a time of crisis for Jacob, but he shall be saved from it. Jeremiah, you could put money on it. At that's what the 3 dots meant. You can put money on it. At that time, the children of Ishmael will rouse all the peoples of the world to come up to war against Jerusalem. Now, if I was reading this to you 20 years ago, you would think it's nuts. What are you talking about? And you look at all the demonstrations around the world right now, it's the beginning. It could be the beginning of this. As it is written, for I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. Zechariah. And also the kings of the earth stand up and the rulers take counsel together against God and against his anointed. That's in Psalms. And further, he who sits in the heavens will laugh, God will mock them. Now, look at this. In the year, in the year 1522, just try to visualize what the world was like in 1522. And there were a handful of Kabbalists living up in the northern city of Safat, and he was one of them. And he wrote a commentary on the Zohar. And the piece I'm going to look at with you now is his commentary on the texts above. All the nations will unite together against Jerusalem. And watch this. For they shall make a peace treaty among themselves to turn against Israel and annihilate her. For Israel will have established a sovereign state for themselves. Seriously? In 1522, there was a thought that the Jews were going to have a government and country in Israel. Nobody thought that, especially not in 1933 onwards in Europe. Nobody thought Israel would be a sovereign state.
Yeah, and this wasn't all too long after the Inquisition.
That's right.
The Spanish Inquisition.
That's right. Correct. I'm losing the text. I have to shrink it down a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can still read it. I'll read it for you. It will be a time of crisis for Jacob, Israel, but they shall not be completely broken. Rather, they shall be safe from it. Which you see, he's drawing from the quotes of the Zohar and tying it together. What I find is phenomenal is that he's speaking of this. You know what? I have an idea. Here we go. Okay. So here you have in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, then your God will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. God will bring you together again from all the peoples where your God has scattered you, even if you're outcasts or at the ends of the world in Kansas. Oh, wait, sorry, it doesn't say that. From there, your God will gather you. From there, God will fetch you. Woof. And your God will bring you to the land of your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And God will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your ancestors, which is happening right now. And your God will grant you abounding prosperity in all your understandings, in all your issue from the womb, and offspring from the other, and your produce from the soil, turn the desert into an oasis. For God will again delight in your well-being and that of your ancestors. Okay, now you have here Yirmiyahu. Assuredly a time is coming, declares God, and it shall no more be said, as God who lives, who brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt. See, I want to show you this because this is what I was referring to before. But rather, as God lives, who brought the Israelites out of the northern land, which I'll get back to, and out of all the lands to which they have been banished, I will bring them back to their land, and which I gave their ancestors. Now, what city, for 25 points, is due north from Jerusalem? And Moscow.
Oh, well, I was thinking, okay, I wasn't thinking outside of Israel.
Oh, yeah, Moscow is due north. So it's kind of interesting, the Israelites out of the northern land. I mean, we had the survivors of the Holocaust, and then we had the huge Russian immigration and so on. Anyhow, so now you have here in the book of Ezekiel, which you guys probably know much better than I do. This is God talking to Gog. By the way, in our tradition, these are not two people. This is a country called Magog, which you can look up in the chapter of Noah. At the very end, you'll see that Magog is one of the grandsons of Noah through his son Japhet. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it in English.
Okay.
And Gog is the king of the country called Magog. Okay.
Yeah.
Be ready, prepare yourselves, you and all your battalions muster about you, and hold yourselves in reverse. After a long time, you shall be summoned. In the distant future, you shall march against the land of people. Now, watch this. Restored from the sword, that's Holocaust-ish, gathered from the midst of many peoples against the mountains of Jerusalem, which will have long lain desolate. That's right. A people liberated from the nations and now dwelling secure. You shall advance, coming like a storm. You shall be like a cloud covering the earth, you and all your cohorts, and with many people with you. Thus says the sovereign God, on that day, a thought will occur to you, and you will conceive a wicked design. You will say, I will invade a land of open towns. I will fall upon the tranquil people living secure, all of them living in unwalled towns and lacking bars and gates, in order to spoil and seize plunder, to turn your hand against repopulated waste and against people gathered from other nations, acquiring livestock and positions, living at the center of the earth. Therefore, prophesy, O mortal, say to God, and say, the sovereign one, surely on that day when my people in Israel are living secure, you will take note, and you will come from your home in the farthest north, you and many peoples with you, all of them mounted on horses, vast hordes, mighty army, and you will advance upon my people Israel like a cloud covering the earth. Operation Desert Storm. This shall happen on that distant day. I will bring you to my land, and the nations may know me when, before their eyes, I manifest my holiness through you, O God, with a G. Okay, now here's the pieces we did. And here we have, just before the war begins, is the whole famous Elijah, which we can skip now. Here is the Talmud, and Sanhedrin, and it's bringing the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer and also the opinion of Yeshua as to how the redemption will come. Now, look at this one here. This is fascinating. Rabbi Eliezer says, if the Jewish people repent, they are redeemed, and if not, they are not redeemed. Rabbi Joshua said to them, if they do not repent, will they not be redeemed at all? Rather, the Holy One, blessed be He, will establish a king for them whose decrees are as harsh as those issued by Haman. Haman is Purim.
Yeah.
Purim is Iran. Keep that in mind with something we're going to see in a few more minutes. He will appoint like a king, for them means the whole world, as you'll see later, who will be just like Haman. And the Jewish people will have no choice but to repent, and so on. Okay. Now, check this out. That's not the one. Here we go. This is a text of about maybe 1,500 years ago, based on the book of Isaiah. At that time, when the Messiah will be revealed, the king of Persia, that's Iran, will threaten the king of, I'll add, Saudi Arabia. And the king of Saudi Arabia will go to Syria to receive support. Maybe that's where the US troops are. The king of Iran will then threaten to destroy the entire world. Now, how could you 1,500 years ago threaten to destroy the whole world? You could go out and spend 10 years conquering the world like Alexander, or you could control the whole world and maybe kill people, but destroy the whole world? That's only something that we could do today.
Yeah.
All the nations will shout in confusion and fall upon their faces. Israel too will shout in confusion, say, where can we turn to? Where can we run? God will say to them, my children, have no fear. All that I've done is only for your sake. Do not fear, the time for your redemption has come. And there shall be a day, and it is known to God, which shall be neither day or night, and it shall, now into Zechariah, and it shall come to pass that at evening time there shall be light, and this light shall be the plague with which the Lord shall strike all the nations that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away when they stand on their feet, their eyes shall consume away in their sockets, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouths. And now, for 50 points, name that movie.
I can't remember which of the two. I can't believe I can't. I'm pretty sure that this is Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it
Bingo.
might be
You
The
got
Last
it.
Crusade.
No, you nailed it. And it's when the guy opened the ark.
Yeah, right.
It did the meltdown. now watch, this is totally crazy. Okay. And now this is the book of Joel. I don't know if you've studied this book. I think it has only 6 chapters. Okay, good. Then if you study, you know that the book of Joel is only about end of days. That's only subject he covers. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I will show my wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood, fire, and I'm not going to translate it yet, Timrot Oshan. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood at the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. This is the Gog Magog, crescendo. Now, you are the prophet Joel. You are writing about the future. And you have a visual that no comprende. So you see blood, that's easy. Blood today is like it was then. You see fire, guess what? Fire look then as it does now. But now you see this thing. No words. So what do? You describe it. So what's the description here? The description here is the word timrot is plural. In Hebrew, if you have an ot at the end, it's feminine. If it's an im at the end, it's masculine. So the word here is really timar or timara.
Can I guess it? Because I think I know what that is.
Go for it, please.
Is it pillars of smoke?
Not pillars. More important than pillars. But yeah, the second word, ashan, is smoke. What's the first word, though?
Okay, well, I don't know. Because I think in the King James, it reads as pillars. But what is timrot?
Well, I understand why it would be pillars, but pillars leaves out the best part. Because by the way, they did have pillars in those days. So you could have used the word for pillars if they were merely pillars. But what the word timrot means is a date palm tree.
A date palm tree?
Think about that. Date palm tree is something that goes in a column straight up, just like your translation, a column. But then the branches all, if you'll excuse the expression, mushroom out over the top.
I think you and I may have actually talked about this before, because I remember you saying that.
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about telling the truth. It always comes back. You don't have to remember anything. Especially my age. I told somebody the other day, I said, to remember something at my age is like an Olympic event already. So that's an interesting. And then the last thing I'll show you. Oh no, that's the. I didn't have the other ones out. Okay, but that's like a little sampler of the kind of stuff I'm at least bringing about in my classes and all. So I just thought you might, since we did talk about that you might enjoy that.
Earlier you were talking about how this might be a moment where God is proving like who's with or against Israel. And I know in the book of Joel, I think in the third chapter, I think it talks about the valley of decision, Jehoshaphat. Is that how that's like interpreted? Uh
Bingo, bingo.
just like
Yes, nailed it.
yeah,
Yeah,
the valley of decision. Yeah.
yeah.
Um and then speaking of Iran, I have just a little bit more time here. Speaking of Iran, do you believe that this is like a big master plan of Iran? Because I know like a lot of places have been playing that down. For example, recently the leader of Hezbollah was saying that no, they planned it themselves. Hamas planned it themselves. We didn't know. Do you think that
Hold
it's
on.
probably
Where
a
the
big
leaders
thing?
of Hamas live?
Huh?
Where do the leaders of Hamas live?
Well, I know they don't live in Gaza.
Are you
I know that
kidding?
they live comfortably in other places. I can't remember exactly all where,
Not other
but
places. Not other places. Well, there's one country called Lebanon, but that's not where the big boys are. Do you know how many Hamas billionaires there are?
no.
Just when you do me a favor, after we're done, Google the following: Hamas billionaires,
Okay.
and see if you have as much money. And then ask yourself, the only person to follow the money, where did that money come from? Must have got lucky on the lottery in New York. Don't think so. This is all the money that also went into building an amazing military structure of tunnels and all the rest of it. Gaza today could have been like the Emirates. It could have been the Miami Golden Coast beach of the Mediterranean. People could have a whole nation of people extremely wealthy and prosperous. It's unbelievable what Gaza could have been. And all the American money given both to Iran and to Gaza and from the EU money never went to help the Gazans because they don't care about the Gazans. They will actually build their headquarters under hospitals
Yeah.
because they don't care.
And speaking of which, I know that that's kind of the news today. Today, they're like getting close to that like main hospital where the headquarters is at. Excuse me. I know that they said that it took a couple of years to plan this, and I've been trying to like think, without any expert opinion. I'm not an expert. Just thinking if they took this much time to plan it, and surely they would have known that this would be the end result. I would think that they would know that the end result would be that Israel would do a ground invasion and want to destroy them. They must have had a larger plan. This must be like a phase, like first
Excellent.
phase.
Let's go through the plan. Let's
Oh,
go through the plan.
okay.
I'm totally on board with you. So let's go step by step. So the first step is absolutely they knew there would be a total invasion of Gaza. They don't care. When you play chess, you sacrifice pawns.
Right.
So this is the pawn. They don't give a flying hoot. But the most funny thing is all these homosexual, whatever, I don't know, it's like half the American alphabet at this point. But like, and they're supporting Hamas. Hamas throws these people off their roofs. It's just like it's insane. But anyway, let's not go down that road. So right now, they wanted this because first of all, they already have all the baby crying pictures. They have all of this, they have all of that. They say 10,000 people, no way to validate any of that. They knew that the world innately, a large part, hates Jews because they hate God at the same time. And so therefore they knew that this would bring it out. This anti-Semitism was growing anyhow. And this would knock it over the top. And you know what? Not everybody thinks Hitler was a bad guy. And not everybody thinks the Nazis were wrong. They just lost. That doesn't mean they're wrong. When your football team loses, it doesn't resign, stop playing football, just waits for the next game. So these guys now established, they're even cartoons here of Hamas like taking an old woman's hand that was being led by a Nazi and saying to her, I'll take over from here. So they don't see that as atrocious. They see that as ferocious. And look how bad we are. Nothing's going to stop us because we're no longer human. We call them a mullik, an interesting word to study. And so therefore, when these people do what they do, they don't care about their own people. And their heads are all living in Qatar with billions of dollars in banks. So they don't care. So what's the real move? The real move is that when Russia went into the Ukraine, that was only supposed to be a few months long. They never dreamt it would be years. They never dreamt how embarrassed they would be by a teeny little, that's not so teeny, but militarily speaking country called Ukraine, and how lame the European response is, even though it wasn't, it isn't, and so on and so on. So that was a big mess up. But the conspiracy, or I shouldn't use that word because it's negative in America, but the relationship between China and Russia, which is shared communism, is still alive. Again, they didn't say, oh my gosh, the Americans won, therefore we're wrong. They just said we lost, but we'll win the next game. So now they have 3 PowerPoints here. Actually, there's 2 and 2 smaller ones. The 2 are Russia and China. The smaller ones are North Korea and Iran. And each one is being moved at the right time. The original game plan was Russia was going to wipe out half of Ukraine, while the whole world went nuts. China was going to have Taiwan. If you remember, all the planes were flying over Taiwan right at that same time because they still thought Russia was going to win. They were getting ready. It didn't happen, so China just went low key. So then the next move on the thing is Iran. Iran has proxies of Hezbollah. Hamas is a proxy. The Houthis in Yemen who are firing rockets are, and there are many proxies. What does a proxy mean? You mean if somebody comes and shoots at you with a gun, your only right is to shoot back at the hand? You can't shoot at the person? So Iran is the body with this 7-headed dragon with all these guns in its hand, and it's just shooting it, but it's playing the political game. So that's not really us, and so that's fine. That's what happens. That's why Menachem Begin used to say, any terror group, we hold the country from which it launches responsible for its activities or is funded. You have to hold states responsible, then the terror goes down. Lebanon just got word from Blinken that if Nasrallah starts with Hezbollah, the Israelis aren't going to wipe out Hezbollah. Israel's going to wipe out Lebanon. There'll be no Lebanon. There'll be no Beirut. It'll be gone. And so the Lebanese don't want that. What do they want that for? And in fact, most of the people in the ferocious Hezbollah army are mercenaries. They don't really give a hoot about Hezbollah, but it's good money. So that
would Lebanon be strong enough to, I don't know, to stop Hezbollah or control them or anything like that?
Maybe not. But you know what? They sure better try.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they're in between a rock and a hard place right now.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. You believe that this is not
That's how we see it over here. There's a network going on. That's why the Americans brought over as I said before, the Ohio submarine. That's why there are 2 aircraft carriers here. You don't need all that heavy metal here for the situation in Gaza. You don't. And even with Hezbollah, you want to know the truth, Israel will destroy Hezbollah. They might get the first shot, but that'll be their last shot. And so you don't really need that. Now, why is it here? Because really on that Ohio, I think about 1,500 to 2,000 Tomahawks. And it's not a question of having the nuclear power, it's the Tomahawk. Tomahawk, as you probably know as a military, is an awesome, I always say Israel's going to Tomahawk because it's so accurate, it just cuts the hair off and leaves the Tomahawk in the middle.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that in the background. There's a rocket attack going on right now in Tel Aviv. I have the thing set up and it sends me alerts. Okay. Anyway, Tomahawk.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, you got to think these things through. Sort of, and there's some, by the way, you know who the largest donor to American universities is today?
No.
Qatar.
Qatar is?
Hundreds of millions of dollars to professors all across the United States.
Wow. Well, we should probably wrap it up about right now.
On that happy note.
Yeah. But hopefully we can continue, with our regular schedule moving forward, and
God willing.
You'll be safe. And you said it was you have 2 nephews?
Grandsons.
Oh, grandsons. Hopefully they'll be safe down there. And we'll talk to you next time. For everybody else, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. But also make sure to share it. This is a rare opportunity to talk to somebody and hear from somebody that's actually in Israel, so make sure to share it. And I'll talk to you guys later.